Let us begin this homily by saying a prayer together. Oh, Lord, take my mind and think through it. Take my lips and speak through it. Take my heart and set it on fire. Can you say that? Oh, Lord, take my mind and think through it. Take my lips and speak through it. Take my heart and set it on fire. Oh, to see Jesus. Did you ever have that wish? To see him? You did? Yeah. You're there where I want to be. Each Sunday is given a psalm to meditate on. Last Sunday's psalm was Psalm 34. This Sunday's psalm is Psalm 25. I love the Psalms. One verse. Both of those psalms are acrostic psalms. That is, they are 22 verses long, and each verse begins with another Hebrew letter. Not counting the vowels, the consonants. 22 consonants in the Hebrew language. Verse 15 of Psalm 25 goes, my eyes are ever toward the Lord. Let us say that verse. My eyes are ever toward the Lord. And I want you to go with me to the Gospel of Mark. This is really the year of the Gospel of Mark. And I'm taking you to the 9th chapter where after 6 days, Peter, James, and John see Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration, and his clothes are so white that no bleacher could make his clothes that way. And with him are Moses and Elijah. Then I want you to think about a line from the Nicene Creed, which we will confess after this homily. Being of one substance with the Lord, with the Father. Well, I see that many of you are my age and have lived a long, fulfilled life. How many have heard of Ozzy Hoffman? Nobody has heard of Ozzy Hoffman. Ozzy Hoffman was once the Lutheran hour speaker and talked like Ozzy. And when Ozzy got a hold of a microphone, it never was the same after that. Ozzy Hoffman, I remember hearing him in Riverside Church in Manhattan near Columbia University, and also hearing him in San Diego when we lived in San Diego. And both sermons, both homilies were Christ-centered, but he knew his audience. The audience made a difference in how he spoke about Christ. And in the Riverside Church sermon, in that sanctuary that was filled with stained glass windows, there was a guitarist, a young guitarist, sitting in the front pew, came up to introduce Ozzy's sermon. And he introduced it by singing a song. You got to make Jesus real. You got to take him out of the stained glass windows and make him real. Ozzy, disturbed, mounted the pulpit, slammed his fist on the podium that could be heard throughout the sanctuary, and said, you can't make Jesus real. He is real. Wow. Ozzy had the attention of the audience, let me tell you. It was part of him. Here was a reasoning, feeling man who at the heart of it all had Jesus there inside of him. What do we say about Jesus today? We don't see him walking about the streets of Newport News or Williamsburg, but we still are here because we believe in him. We do. What do we say about him? How do we confess him today? We say that he's up there at the right hand of the Father, right? And he rules over all things, including the government. The government is under him, is the handmaid of him who placed the politicians in office, the kingdom of the left hand. But he is also ruling over the kingdom of the right hand, where he prays for and guides the souls of believers in him, the church, the kingdom of the right hand. And he is with each one of us personally, knowing us as we live out our days and carry out our duties. Jesus is there beside us. But there are some people here on earth that they are so intensely into the Bible stories and into Jesus' presence that all other things kind of become secondary. Do you know any people like that? My father was like that. My father said after he and Mom came back from the Holy Land that he heard the rooster crow that Peter heard when he denied the Lord 3 times. And I, a skeptical youth, said, you're making that up, Dad. It's not that real. But for him, it was real. And which should lead to a principle that we should have in our hearts, and took me a long time to claim as my own. Don't ever criticize somebody else's spiritual experience. It could be as true for them as anything else in life. So that when my dad died in the late years of the last century, he said, "Through the law, I've been made free from the law. It is not I who have lived, but Christ who has lived in me. And the life that I lived by the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me." Jesus was as real as anything else in life. Do you know people like that? It has taken me a while to get there. 78 years old, a year and 4 months ago I had a heart operation. And I had the best doctor on the East Coast at the University of Virginia Medical Center, Dr. Alawati. I met with his assistant twice and with him once before I was to have the operation. They said it wasn't an emergency, but you'll have to have it if you want to live a normal life hereafter. So I could determine the date in which it took place. And I thought about it, and I was teaching a course at King of Glory on the Psalms. And I wanted to complete that course. If ever I had something to do, that's what I wanted to do here in this life. So I thought about the operation for more than a month. I prayed about it and thought, maybe this will be it. There will be no tomorrow after the operation. And so I was ready. And during this time, I thought about the first operation I had, the operation when, like all Minnesota youth, had to have their tonsils out. 10 years old, I recall going to the hospital and, you know, the ether effect. You ever have that? There you are, lying down on the bed, and your arms and hands are strapped on the side of the bed. And they put this metal mask over your face. And then on top of the metal mask, they put a rag. And on top of the rag, they pour this ether solution on you. And then they say, the nurses say, breathe in, breathe deeply in. So you do. And for me, at least, fireballs went through the air. Boom, boom, boom. And I struggled to get myself free, and I couldn't. And the nurses held my arms down. And then finally, I passed out. But that's not the way it happens today. I ushered down the hallway. I saw my wife, said the word to her. I saw my son, he was there too, had a conversation with him. They injected me. Boom! You're out, just like that. No consciousness at all, no struggle, just out. I remember the Korean nurse talking about her broken relationship with her boyfriend before I went out. And then I went out. And I woke up as if no time had passed. But the nurse said, it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I knew I had been under for 5 hours. And then during that time, I saw Jesus. I really do think so. He didn't say anything. He smiled, and I was as confident as ever I have been that it would all turn out all right. That even if I died, it would be good. So when I woke up, another revelation occurred to me. The revelation was, this is like eternity. No sunrise, no sunset, timelessness. Time passes, and you don't know it passes. I think that's the way it'll be too. And it gave me a new insight on how to conduct a funeral. Because it always kind of wrestles with me in terms of, there's Aunt Helen in the coffin. And I'm supposed to say she's in heaven because she's been baptized and brought into an identity with Jesus Christ's cross and resurrection. But it's hard because the 12-year-old in the pew says she's in the coffin, not in heaven. But now I think you can easily say she's in heaven. Because soon as you die, it happens. Everything all at once. There is no time. She is in heaven. Like as the early church father John Chrysostom said, like as God used the common element of earth to create the first human being, he uses the common created element of water to recreate us. And so the deceased has that blessing through death. Where is Jesus in your life today? Have you seen him? It's not a proof of your faith, but I think, when he is so much a part of your life, there is evidence that he's there. And it's good to have that confidence in the Lord. St. Anselm, guy who lived about 1100, sometime around there, said, a theologian, and all of you are possible theologians, is one who believes, but one who strives to understand what is going on with Jesus and myself. And so that's what the people who wrote the Nicene Creed in AD 325 has been with us for all these years because somebody thought it through, saying what about Jesus? Saying, God of God, light of light, very God of very God, begotten, not made, being of one substance with the Father, by whom all things are made. It's the second to last line I want to dwell on. Being of one substance with the Father. Why do you have to say that? Just say Jesus, like preschoolers. No, because there was a heresy being floated around at this time, promoted by this clever guy called Arius, and it was all driven by his spirit of envy, that he didn't get to be the bishop of Alexandria, Egypt. He got denied that. Well, I'll make up a new theology for you guys who win. And he did, by saying to fathers on earth. There was a time, if you think about it, that you were not a father. And there was a time in which the Son was not. And he applied that to God the Father. There was a time in which God the Father was not a father. And therefore there was a time in which Jesus, his Son, was not. Oh. He converted it into a thalia. That is a song for sailors who sang the song on the Mediterranean Sea over and over again. There was a time in which the Father was not a father, and a time in which the Son was not. And the heresy spread across the Roman Empire and lasted with the church for centuries. And then they came up. And Constantine, who was converted to Christianity by seeing a sign in the sky of a cross and a voice speaking to him, "In this sign you shall conquer." And now his empire was in discord and disharmony and not a unity. So he called all the bishops together of the entire Roman Empire to come to a place called Nicaea, which is in today's Italy. Turkey. Because there's where he won a military victory and also victory he wanted for the church and his empire. And they brought in the bishops from all over the empire. And when he saw the bishops coming off the boats to go to their meeting, he who wanted to be the leader of the meeting said, "I can't do it." Because they came with broken arms and bent bodies. They had been tortured for the faith. And he said, "You lead the meeting." And lead the meeting they did. And came up with the Nicene Creed. Being of one substance with the Father. No. Jesus has been there ever since eternity, if you can imagine that. And he will be with us through eternity, till eternity. That's what the Nicene Creed says to us. He is of the same substance with the Father. In other words, he's as much God as the Father, and is still with us to keep his promises. We are going to be touched by him in the communion this morning. He's coming in the bread and the wine, the very Son of God among us, to be in our hearts and our minds and capture us anew, in a new way, to be his children. Oh, to see Jesus. Oh, to see Jesus.